Hey there guys, welcome to the next tutorial here on the channel. Welcome to the fourth tutorial of Bow Week, and this tutorial I'm going to show you guys how to make a slightly different bow than we've been making over the past 3 days, and it's going to be kind of cool using a whole bunch of loops and strips of tape, which is going to be kind of cool. So let's get started here. So for this video I'm going to be using the denim duct tape as well as the graffiti 2.0 tape, and I'm also going to be using a simple barrette clip here. You can also use a large alligator clip, and you can probably get away with using a bobby pin as well. So let's get started on the tutorial. So the first thing I'm going to do is pick one of our colors. I'm going to go with the graffiti 2.0, and I'm going to cut out a strip of tape that is 3 inches long. And I'm going to fold this on top of itself like this. And this is going to be the base for all of our loops that we're going to apply to our bow. So stick it in half just like that, and then we'll start working on the loops. The next thing I did is cut out 3 strips of tape that are 2.5 inches long, and you can see that there. I'm going to take each one of these and fold them in half, just like we did before, just like this. And then once I get that, I'm going to crease them like this. So do that with your other 2 strips right here, and those will be part of the loops for up here. So once I have those 3 pieces cut out and creased, I'm going to take a small strip of tape here. I'm going to cut that out into smaller strips like this. And then what I'm going to do is take my first loop, and I'm going to stick that right on top of this piece here. And you can overlap by a decent amount. I'm going to come in a little bit on the other side as well, so it's not going to make too much of a difference here. But we want to take our piece, and we're simply going to wrap this all the way around this piece here towards the back. And that'll seal that down. Then we're going to take our second one. I'm going to align this a little bit off the top here. I'm probably going to align the 2 points here, which is kind of hard to see because of the graffiti tape. But I'm just aligning this point and that point of the one on the other one. Then I'm going to take another piece here, and I'm simply going to wrap this around to the back. Now the trick is when you're attaching all of these not to cover up a lot of the loops. So what you want to do is sometimes take your pair of scissors and kind of trim off if it would, tuck in and cover up that part of the loop. So I'm going to take my third piece. That's going to go right down here. Instead of putting it on top, it's going to look kind of weird. I'm actually going to put it on the bottom so it has this cool staggered appearance. And then I'm going to take my last piece here, my last attaching strip, and that one's going to go straight on top just like this and wrap around towards the back. So my next step is to repeat that exact same process, except on this part of the bow we're going to do it on this side as well. And if I apply them right to this piece, it might make the bow a little bit bigger, a little bit wider in the center than it really needs to be. So what you can do is actually trim a little bit off. I know I said to make it 3 inches, but that's really depending on what size your bow is. So you can always trim a little bit of that off, and then of course apply it right to there. And it'll look a little more uniformed in the very end. So once you get the other side attached, just take your finger and kind of puff up these loops a little bit, and this will kind of just give you guys an idea of what the bow will look like in advance. You want to make sure these are nice and puffed out, and then once it looks pretty good, we can start to move on to our next step, which will actually be applying much bigger pieces on the sides here. Now I kind of forgot to mention, if you guys want to stop at this point, you can of course, just stop right there and then just attach your barrette clip to the back. But I'm actually going to make 2 bigger pieces on either side of the bow, and that's what I'm going to be doing next. So I'm going to cut out 2 strips of tape that are 5 inches long, and I'm simply going to connect these back on themselves like this. And this is a little bit tricky, so you always want to be really careful when you're folding tape back on itself like this. Otherwise it can get like a lot of bubbles and a lot of creases into it. So go nice and slowly when you're doing it this way, and stick it down just like that. Do any trimming with a pair of scissors to make sure there's no sticky side showing, and then we'll work on attaching these to the bow. So once you have your 2 pieces, we're going to crease them in half like this. Make sure it has a good crease, and then we're going to align them behind the bow here. Now I typically line up the edges so it's just a straight line on that side there. So I'm going to make sure that it's covered up on this side. Then I'm very carefully going to flip the whole thing over, and I'm actually going to need to cut out a much larger piece. This is going to be about 2.5 inches long, and then I'm going to cut that into segments lengthwise. So I'm going to use this to attach to the back here. And since this is a different color, you really don't want to allow this to kind of bleed over the side. You don't want to attach that. So definitely take a pair of scissors and just trim it off right there. And then of course we can work on our second piece. So for our second piece, going to fold that in half, and this of course is going to end up right about there. And that'll give it this cool, kind of triangle piece on the side. So make sure that's lined up, and of course going to stick that down just like that. And this of course will wrap around the front. You don't want it to really connect the two too much, so I'm actually just going to trim it off right about there. And there we have the one side of the bow. So once you have the other side done, we're simply going to attach the barrette clip to the bow. And that's actually the easiest part of the entire video, actually. All you're going to do is take a small little piece like this, and then we're going to apply it. Actually, we're going to stick it to the back of the barrette clip. You want to kind of stick it, of course, to that piece which is on the inside. And you'll know if you did it correctly if you can pop it open and it doesn't interfere with that at all. So we're simply going to stick this to the back, and you can use a much larger piece if you want to absolutely make sure that it stays on there, but I'm just using a smaller piece for the back here. And there you have it. So that's how to make a duct tape bow using the bow loops that I like to call them, and I'm actually going to show you guys exactly what it looks like if you trim the edges, because it kind of looks cool with the pointed edges, but it might look cooler if we kind of rounded the edges a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do with my pair of scissors here. So I'm simply going to round the edges like this. And this just, might give it a little more style, because sometimes, the pointed edges don't look very cool, because these are more rounded towards the center here. So I'm simply going to round all these edges like this. Nothing too fancy, And then what I'm going to do, once again, is take my finger and kind of just puff these up a little bit, just make them look a little bit better. And of course, that's done by just sticking your finger inside and just kind of puffing them up a little bit. So that's how to make the bow. I think it looks a lot cooler with the rounded ones. So that's going to wrap up this tutorial. This is the 4th video for Bow Week, and tomorrow will be the last day, and of course there'll be a time lapse coming tomorrow. So hopefully you guys are enjoying the Bow Week so far, and I'll catch you tomorrow for that last tutorial and time lapse. So hope you liked the video.